Before introducing our speaker, let me say a few words about the subject of customer returns. Most of us take for granted the fact that we can buy something and if it disappoints us, the merchant will exchange it or give us back our money. But when we buy something remotely, the process gets more complicated. And in case you think Amazon is something new, I own a 1913 mail order catalog that contains 1,495 pages with hundreds of thousands of different items. On the cover of that book is this statement: "We guarantee that any article purchased from us will satisfy you perfectly, that it will give the service you have a right to expect, that it represents full value for the price you pay, and if for any reason whatever you are dissatisfied with any article you purchase from us, we expect you to return it to us at our expense. We will exchange it for exactly what you want, or will return your money, including any transportation charges you have paid." Signed, Sears, Roebuck and Company, Chicago, Illinois. How's that for service? Good merchants have been fulfilling promises like that for years, but only in the last 2 or 3 have we had third-party companies that handle customer returns, and that is the business that our speaker will describe. Jonathan Poma is co-founder and chief executive at Loop Returns. His passion for solving problems is matched only by his passion for seeing humans grow. His company delivers returns software for merchants and shoppers alike. When Jonathan is not working, he's spending time on the golf course or with his wife and kids, or bringing the two together. Please join me in a warm welcome for Jonathan Poma.
All right, thanks, Ken, for the great introduction, having me out. Rotarians for having me and hosting me and giving me the opportunity to share a little bit today. That four-way test kind of speaks to me as someone who, growing up and learning to lead and learning to grow, and who has a problem saying whatever he thinks immediately and letting that come out of his mouth. I've had to develop my own mental models about what to share and what to let come through, and I think this one's pretty solid and speaks a lot to the values and the mission of the club. So thanks for that. Turn this on, test it, make sure it works. Apparently I've got a few too many builds in my slides, so I'll have to look over there every once in a while. But instead of reading off this, maybe just reinforce, beyond the company and all that sort of stuff, family and kids are. My wife and kids are more important to me than any of that. And I think we always talk about business partners, and sharing with them and sacrificing with them. But my wife has done more to let me run this business and set me up for success than anything else. Those are our 2 kiddos. My daughter Kate will turn 6 next month. My son James just turned 2 a few weeks ago. We live in Old Worthington. Have been in Columbus since 2010. Met my wife at Miami University, grew up in Youngstown, Ohio. Talk about Youngstown as a great place to be from, but when you're in sales in Youngstown and your wife's a merchant at Abercrombie and you want to marry her, you have to leave Youngstown and come down here. And so I've been down here since. Somehow ended up with some builds backwards in here. But Loop, my background have been in software and sales since 2010. I think the only way you build a good business that solves a problem is by understanding your customers and that problem intimately. Came from a sort of a managed services consulting background, and had no idea that I wanted to build this business. I don't think that's how that works. I think you solve a problem for a customer, and if you're lucky and you stay close enough to it and focus enough on it, the business opportunities present themselves. So we were running an agency that did design development services for brands that sell products online, e-commerce brands on the Shopify platform, and Chubby's approached us with a problem one day and told us they were, having these issues with returns, and they were having their customer support teams, doing live chat and printing labels and all this sort of stuff. And we built a piece of software for them in 2016 that we called Chubby's RMA. RMA stands for Return Manufacturer's Authorization. And at that point in time, the online experience looked a lot like you go to the footer, you download a PDF, you send it in, and hopefully a month later you've gotten a refund. You probably pay a shipping label and all that sort of stuff. And we just thought the experience should be better. We built it for Chubby's, delighted their customers, delighted their support team, saved them a bunch of money, got their customers to buy more products. And about a year after that, I learned the term SaaS, which is software as a service, learned about the idea of venture capital and scaling a software business and not just selling that as a product to more of our customers. But that's sort of the origin story, and a lot of right place, right time, good fortune, making that possible. This does work. It's a demo, live demo with Aviator Nation, who's a very popular comfort apparel brand with millennials. And while you're watching that, I'll sort of talk over it. But the way Loop works, it's a white labeled platform. You can think of it as an experience that feels a lot like shopping, to make that moment where a product has disappointed a shopper suck a lot less than it would otherwise suck. We make it easy to look up your order, and then we kind of take you through a little bit of an experience where, the way I talk about it is most returns happen because a product that you actually wanted failed to meet your expectations. And so we say it's the right brand and the right time and the right product, but something went wrong, and we make that really easy to exchange for another variant of that product, so to speak. Then there's right brand and right time, but maybe the product didn't end up being what you want, and we make it really easy to shop the entire catalog and look for something else. And then there's maybe it's the right brand, but the wrong time, and we make it easy to get a gift card so that you can come back or store credit. And then the last, obviously, is wrong brand, where we make it easy and straightforward to get a refund. But that's the oversimplified, 5-6 year story of what we've been doing at Loop, and continuing to refine and make work a little bit better. These slides are current as of our December round of funding last year, but in 2022 we processed 13 million returns. $1 billion was refunded to our merchants, and we that was $1 billion in refunds on almost $2 billion in sales. And a simple way to think about it is all the money that gets spent online, 1 in every $4 gets returned, and that can be very costly to merchants, especially when we talk about customer acquisition cost. You pay to acquire customers, whether that's advertising or email marketing or whatever it is, and you pay all this money to acquire these customers. The product disappoints. And if you make it challenging for them to return the product, that investment in building that relationship kind of goes down the drain. So that's what we've been doing. As of last fall, we had grown about 108% year over year and had a 3-year compound annual growth rate of about 136%. We're about a $36 million run rate business today. Should finish the year around $50 million. Venture backed, we're not profitable as of yet. We burn about $4 million a quarter, and are projected break-even cash flow profitable, and probably around $100 million in sales mid 2025. This is kind of what we have done, right? So Shopify is this mid-market SaaS platform that makes it easy for brands to sell products online. And we've been kind of the leading platform for Shopify's best merchants. Where we're headed, right, in our world of venture-backed software, it's all about total addressable market and how much of that can you capture and how much of that can you grow, because you get these valuations at early stages, and you've got to continue to win business and eventually become profitable to earn them. So what we're doing, it's 3-pronged strategies. I don't think humans can remember more than 3 things, and you repeat them and repeat them and repeat them forever. So we're defending our market-leading position on Shopify as the first prong of our strategy. We're expanding what we do upmarket to enterprise merchants. In our world, an enterprise merchant today is maybe 500 million in sales, but if you think of all of our merchants on the out on the east side of Columbus, for example, they're much bigger than that half $500 million. And so going up market to serve enterprise merchants. and then solving really what are major problems for modern brands in reverse logistics that Abercrombie and some of those brands might not face. The corporate strategy, borderline vision statement, to establish Loop as a preeminent leader in these words all matter, and they come up in Q&A, but end-to-end, personalized returns and reverse logistics, whereas today we've not been personalized, we've not been end-to-end, and we've not been reverse logistics. We've just been the sort of narrow category of e-commerce returns management. Why this matters in returns specifically, and then I'll share some market stats. But retailers are faced with really three challenges: heightened shopper expectations, maybe revisited shopper expectations back to what the standard Sears set 110 years ago. But shoppers expect to be able to return easily, and they don't care that a brand started online and may not have the resources to be able to do what some enterprise and larger retailers do, and that's where a SaaS platform like us comes in to give them some of that scale and an opportunity to personalize at scale the way that Amazon or back in the day Sears may have. And these words I kind of chose correctly here: fast, convenient, and hassle-free. What you'll notice is that free is only part of hassle-free there, and it's not free. Merchants aren't required, based on what we've seen at scale, to make returns free. It's just that they've got to be hassle-free and easy. Increased costs. So reverse logistics, supply chain stuff, all of that. If you think of what our merchants use are called third-party logistics provider warehouses, those are all optimized to send outbound shipments. They want to be able to fulfill an order that has been placed as quickly as possible. And they're not optimized for reverse logistics and returns coming back. So what they do is, if I could show you a video, I didn't have it to pull up, but like you see outbound logistics in a warehouse, and it's robots and clean floors and QR codes and neat boxes, and you sort of pan over to the reverse side, and it's effectively a large wire dumpster full of cardboard boxes that come in, and there's no first in, first out, or last in, first out. It's whatever they pull off the top. There's no one has any idea what the quality of the item coming back, and merchants, well, third-party logistics providers, because that's expensive and painful, and folks working on the reverse side turn over 3 to 5 times faster than merchants on the outbound side. It's painful for 3PLs, so they pass that cost on to merchants, which makes it costly for merchants. And then ultimately what happens is inventory yield slows, and it becomes really hard for these modern brands to compete and to actually become profitable, scalable businesses. Last challenge really is maintaining this positive customer experience. And so we kind of sit at the intersection of all of those things for these merchants. And these are just kind of one-liners. 70% of consumers said they're willing to pay for more convenient premium experiences, and 50% already are. This is a question we're asked all the time by our merchants. Amazon set this standard of free and easy. And if you've shopped on Amazon lately, depending on how often you return, you may find that sometimes your returns aren't free, and sometimes they actually introduce a little bit of friction, and that's a little bit of this personalized returns, where if you're a high value customer, they may still be free. If you're a little bit more challenging as a shopper to deal with, they may be less than free. 88% of shoppers agree that eco-friendly return options make them more likely to shop again. So returns consolidation is a big trend in our industry right now, where if you've ever done a Happy Return, they're a partner of ours. They have a consolidation center so that they kind of bundle everything there, and they're not shipping. We process about 2 million returns a month, and think of that like, instead of sending 2 million shipments, all with their own label, all with their own freight, incurring that cost, there are consolidation services that will, it slows the supply chain down a little bit, but they'll bundle all of these together. They'll ship them in bulk in a week, and that will reduce the carbon footprint of all of the returns, and something we're focused on. 98, basically 100% of consumers are more likely to shop with a retailer in the future if they make it fast, convenient, and hassle-free to return products. And then returns as a loyalty driver, not just market trends. 57%, so more than half of shoppers are willing to abandon a brand when provided a poor post-purchase experience. So you buy a product and you're unsure when it's going to show up. It shows up and it doesn't meet your expectations. You make it hard to return. And again, when you pay all this money to acquire these customers, you've got to make sure you're retaining them. 93% of US and UK customers agree that retailers with flexible return policies care more about them as a customer. And perception is reality. So whether you care or not, if you don't demonstrate it through making that experience easy, that relationship gets damaged. 92% of consumers are regularly checking retailers' return policies, up 9% year over year, highlighting that warranties and returns policies can catch consumers' attention out of the gate. And so this feedback ends up leading a lot of our product development. We just launched a new warranty bit of functionality for our merchants. 75% of consumers today expect retailers to suggest new products based on past purchases. So, you start to think about personalized, and when a shopper shows up, they don't want to be recommended stuff they already own. They don't want to be recommended stuff they return. They want to be recommended products that they know they're going to want. And long story short, the data we have on what customers are doing when they return products, what meets their satisfaction, is we believe a key to really driving the right personalized shopping experience going forward. I think that's the end of that. So why does this matter? These obviously are some of our retailers here in Columbus, out on the east side, and one chart's green and one chart's red. But if you look, you see the COVID peak, but you see that Bath and Body Works is up 26% over the last 5 years, and Abercrombie is, I can't read it all the way, but still performing well. And if you take a look at, these are traditional retailers, right? And if you take a look at some of the brands we serve who have IPO'd, and you see what's happening with what we call modern brands, long story short is they're not going to survive if they don't get better at optimizing their supply chain. They're not profitable. They don't own real estate. Their channels aren't mature, and they need to be able to scale more effectively and more quickly than they are today. So we'll kind of hit that, but their channels are insufficient. It's e-commerce and retail, and it needs to be e-com, retail, discount, marketplace, et cetera. The shared warehousing that doesn't afford them necessarily the economies of scale that you do if you own your entire supply chain. And then lastly, return volume drives losses and costs for brands. And so again, we're sitting at the intersection of that. And what we talk about here, these are your traditional retailers, right? So Bath and Body Works has their primary retail channels. They are in Walmart. They have e-com. They also have secondary channels, so they've got their discount retail outlets. They're TJ Maxx, they're Gabriel Brothers, and so that helps them. I think retailers are notoriously bad at inventory planning. There's a whole industry built around trying to help them get better. And when you have secondary outlets like this, you can afford to be a little bit less sophisticated, or you can get more yield out of the product that you purchase. Our modern brands have figured out some of these primary channel relationships, right? Allbirds is at REI. They've got their retail stores, but they're not nearly as mature. And then secondary channels, there's really kind of nothing happening today. A lot of this is, these brands don't want their products showing up in a secondary channel. They don't want you to be able to buy Allbirds at TJ Maxx. And I think what you'll see over the next decade is that's going to change a lot, because you cannot want that to happen all you want, but then you don't have a business and it doesn't really matter what you want. So these brands are going to need to start ending up in these new secondary channels. And there's infrastructure being built to modernize this with some of our partners, and a lot of it's early stage, but similar to the investments in the returns management space that happened in 2017, 2018, we're starting to see investment with some of these up and coming SaaS providers, these third parties who provide some of the scale, and these are partners of ours who we can work with to create these secondary channels and secondary markets for our merchants. I'll kind of move through this quickly, but again, the traditional brands kind of own the entire. This is the closest I could get to these pictures for you. But when you own the full supply chain, and you get the warehouse that's clean on the left, and then these boxes on the right, and so we kind of see this reverse logistics opportunity as the missing link for us, and where we can start to personalize returns. And what we so little off script from the deck, but if you think of us processing 2 million returns a month today, and in 6 months that'll be 3 million returns a month, and in a year it'll be 4.5, 5 million returns a month. Those returns are all going back to a warehouse, more or less, and they're all being triaged at the warehouse. We are starting to build what's called a dispositioning API to work with these warehouse providers to take a really manual, clunky process, feed us that data, and then enable us to do what we're calling dynamic routing, so that before we have to send all of those returns back to the warehouse, we can actually tell things based on age of inventory, age of order, sales velocity, all of these things. We can tell whether an item should be sent back to a warehouse, and we can basically decide in our return software where to route those items to save on freight, get items back on shelves more quickly, get them refurbished more effectively, so on and so forth. And so ultimately, what we're focused on, sort of longer term vision than just the product we're selling today, enabling more products to be sold, reducing the reverse logistics related costs, and then closing the loop on product level data to enrich that entire post-purchase journey. And that's more or less our story.
Time for questions.
If the product doesn't go back to the warehouse, where are the other options?
Yeah, so some of our merchants, for example, Bombas socks, if you're familiar with Bombas, they do, for many of their customers, returnless refunds, where, and again, you've got to sort of personalize this and make sure you're not giving it to everybody. It can be manipulated, all that sort of stuff, but returnless refunds are one example where, like, hey, it's a great customer. It's a product that you don't even want back because you're never going to be able to sell it. Just let the customer keep it. So that's one example. Another is maybe it's an item that you want back, but given that it's been held for 25 days, we can tell you reasonably confidently it's going to need refurbished before it can be resold, and we might route it. We might route it to a refurbishment center so that you don't have to take it back at the warehouse, have someone see that it needs to be refurbished, and then incur more freight and more time. Many of our brands will ask questions in the process, and Brooklinen, for example, sells sheets and bedding. They'll ask a few questions, and if something can't go back to the warehouse, we'll route it to their donation center so that their sheets can be donated. It gets into a little bit of their philanthropy. We also track that at like the accounting ledger side of the business so that we can track what has been donated to mark or write off in the business. And then really beyond that, we're betting on the development of more secondary channels with some of those partners like Arrive and Trove, who will build the infrastructure these brands need to start selling in TJ Maxx, Gabriel Brothers, et cetera. And we think we can start pushing all those products across all those places rather than having the node be the 3PL, having the node be our software, and then some still end up in the 3PL, but we'll route the other places.
I'm sorry, but pardon my ignorance in following you and understanding you, and I think this is a great business. Exciting, but I'm having a hard time understanding if you're taking and selling your services to small companies that don't have a facility to be able to deal with returns, to selling them software and then managing that, and if they're companies that are having problems already, how do they afford your services? Can you give them, say, look, we're doing all these returns and processing, and that you're now turning those into profits?
Yep. So, yeah, good question. Sometimes I get so deep in my subject matter that I need to zoom back out. So, we talk about pixels, not parcels. So there are players in our space who will touch packages, who do own warehousing, high cost infrastructure items. We are pure software. So we never touch the product. If you think of it as like fintech versus banking, fintech might route the money, but they're not going to hold the money. We kind of route the products, but we don't touch or hold them. So we're an asset-light business, pixels, not parcels. Merchants will pay us, on average, there's obviously a marginal cost curve. Our largest merchants who are processing hundreds of thousands of return a month might pay us 15 cents a return. And our smaller merchants who are processing hundreds of returns might pay us $3 a return. And then, what we've got to be able to do is then demonstrate that there's a material return on investment, and that spending that $3 with us will save them shipping label costs, will save them processing costs at the warehouse, will save them customers, and kind of tell the right return on investment story to make that worth it.
So there's no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there's, let's say their warehouses are not sufficient to handle it. Your software will tell them you don't have enough storage capacity, or you don't have the proper people, or you don't don't have the setup appropriate to be able to do this and send it back out?
Yeah,
Or with
the
our-
merchant growth story is typically, and we do, it's not like a paid service we provide, but we will advise, like we're integrated with more third-party logistics providers than any other software stack or software in our space. So we can help merchants figure that out if they ask us for it. But there are the SMB merchants who, small business, who don't have 3PLs at all, who may fulfill their own orders at their house or their garage, and they can use Loop. There are more mid-market size merchants who do have 3PLs, and one of the standard questions in onboarding to even assess product market fit is like, do we have an integration? Do you have a partner who can build you an integration if you don't have one? I would say it's still a relatively dumb integration. It's not really looking at capacity in the warehouse. We go so far as to really, there may be two ways. There's Loop to the third-party logistics provider and their warehouse management system, and then there's that warehouse management system back to Loop. What we send today is called an advanced shipment notification, really so that we can say, hey, you've got 300 returns coming tomorrow, so that they can figure out how many people they're going to need to be able to staff those 300 returns that are coming tomorrow. That's about as sophisticated as we get on the data flow. And then coming back, we don't want them to have to do work in two places, so we will integrate and pull from the warehouse management system. We check this in, the item is what it says it is, issue the refund or ship the exchange, and we will take that data into the e-commerce platform and issue the refund back to the customer in an automated fashion, so that we work with the sort of workflow that already exists in the warehouse. Go front.
What do the investors, especially the venture capitalists, see as your likely growth / their exit strategy?
Yeah. So I think we have to become sort of more than a one-trick pony on this reverse logistics. If we are only the returns management software and we're only on Shopify, that market is really going to top out around $125, $150 million in annualized sales, which is a great business and would be very happy to build it. They're obviously, like, you can sell your existing product to new customers, which is some of that market expansion up to the enterprise, and we are confident that our product market fit is transferable. Then there's, can we increase our share of wallet and deliver value in adjacent ways that leverage some of the network effects and scale of our product, and that's where the reverse logistics triage comes in. I think right now we just hired a new CFO. We've got about $60 million on the balance sheet, burning about $4 million a quarter. So the plan right now, you build a couple different operating models, but we're kind of, the conservative model is, let's say we don't find product market fit in reverse logistics, and let's say enterprise doesn't go as well as we hope. We need to be profitable at $100 million in ARR by mid-2025. If we get that reverse logistics right, which we're placing some bets on right now, I think that starts to be a business that could be 500, 600 million, maybe more in annual sales and be a multi-billion dollar outcome, maybe a public company. But right now, trying to temper, I guess venture as an industry is far less interested in ambition than proof, and we lately, and a couple of years ago that was not true. But what we have proof that we can do is build a $100 million software business in returns management with happy customers, and so that's sort of the operating plan we're building on, with some strategic investments where we hope to find proof over the next really 6 to 9 months in the reverse logistics space to see if we can get it right.
Yeah. Speaking of building your market, how much brand specific customization is expected of your company when you begin to work with it?
Yeah, so I would say if there's this is industry jargon, but if there's like aesthetic sort of visual brand identity and there's like user experience customization, we're very light on the UX customization and very heavy on the visual identity customization. That said, if you happen to follow our space at all, there's a movement toward like headless commerce, which essentially is it's a branded way of saying you don't want to use the structured UI that is given you by a platform. You want to be able to build your own head, so to speak, to the content management system. And we are considering opening that up and saying, hey, yeah, you can use our default sort of experience, or you can consume all of our APIs. We'll maintain a service level on that, and you can build your own front end to sort of serve whatever you want. And there's a question in my mind actually right now about how opinionated we want to be about is our way to do it the best way to do it, and how much we want to let people be more custom there and maybe erode the value that the service provides.
It seems like the biggest difference, Jonathan, from the Sears and Roebuck model is that Sears catalog was good for a whole year.
Mm-hmm.
And the product cycles have changed a lot to where you see something on there and it may only be there for a month. And so you don't know whether you need a medium or a large or a pink or a green.
Yep.
So you order medium, large, and pink and green, and
Yep.
then a size 7, a size 8, and a whatever.
Yeah.
And that elicits a lot of the returns. Do you see that changing, or is that
Yeah,
your
so
best
so
opportunity?
so that concept is called bracketing. It was branded by one of our competitors, and it's funny to see that category get created. I don't know. We've seen a little bit of that dialing back. I think honestly, just with challenges consumers are facing, they're less willing to front that money and to figure it out. It's, you know, if I won't get this exactly right, but I think bracketing was something we saw in, you know, through 2020 and 21 in something like 18% of our returns, and we see it in like 13% of our returns now, which is a pretty meaningful drop in overall contribution of it. But that's still very real. And then I think what, you know, we're starting to bet on too is if I were to build a matrix, and this is a little bit of like the pitch for personalized returns that we're building toward, is like you've got high value customers to low value customers and high potential customers to high risk customers. And if you plot that on a matrix, I believe maybe two things. One, the days of like a standard 30-day return policy or 60-day return policy are going to be things of the past. And if you're a new customer with high potential, you might get a 90-day return policy at checkout. You might actually be able to buy a better return policy the same way you can buy better shipping. And so I think that's going to happen. I also think we're starting to see like membership programs where the default might be a really weak return policy, but if you pay $20 a year to be a member with a brand, you might get a really long, extended, really friendly policy. And so I think a lot of how that works is going to change, and merchants are more responsive to that than they have been in the past.
Do you think that, so it seems like you have a very passionate focus on trying to help some of these smaller companies be competitive and successful, which is great. Do you think that Amazon and companies that have that sort of pull are making consumers have unrealistic expectations for smaller companies to be successful? I mean, they are. What do you think the way around that?
Yeah. I mean, I do think it's unreasonable to be able to expect, if you were to go back 2 years with Amazon, like every return was free and easy, and sometimes they'd give you an instant refund. That's already changing in a pretty material way. That, you know, they're even charging you, if you want to do anything other than print a return label, if you want, they're paying for the convenience of dropping off. And so I think there's presently happening right now is a return to reality in commerce, generally e-com and retail. And there's now maybe an understanding and an expectation that I might have to pay for a great and convenient experience. And so I don't think the great experience expectations are going to come back. I think they're only going to continue to rise, but I think the free and the like economics that don't work, and Amazon's ability to subsidize that through AWS is maybe already becoming a thing of the past. How long? Ken, am I okay to keep going? I'll just keep, yeah.
So currently Loop is a platform that just makes it easy for customers to make their returns.
Mm-hmm.
So like an example would be like right brand, wrong time, and you said maybe a gift card would be the right option. So who actually handles that? It's not Loop currently, it's the merchant?
We are integrated. The only e-commerce platform we're integrated with today is Shopify. And so this would look different if we were doing this for Abercrombie. We would need to be integrated into their system to generate a return label on their behalf using exactly their technology. One of the nice things about Shopify also being SaaS is like the data object that is a gift card or store credit on Shopify is the same across all 2,500 merchants that we have. So we're integrated into Shopify where they request that gift card and we go to the merchant's API, like their storefront via Shopify API, and generate it, and it gets shipped from the merchant's Shopify storefront on behalf of the merchant with a ledger tracking it back to us.
And so then like Luke wants to move into the reverse logistics,
Mhm.
what does that look like going forward?
Yeah, so the first big thing is, if I were to explain sort of what happens with dispositioning today, and dispositioning is an item comes back, it's in a box. Someone takes a box cutter, they open that box up, and they look at this item. Which brand is it? Oh, cool, it's Allbirds. Okay, cool, it's the Tree Runner. Is it new? Can it be resold? Like, someone has to go through and answer questions about all this stuff, and it's manual, it's brand specific, it's in spreadsheets, it's error prone, it's a black box, the merchants can't see it, 3PLs don't like doing it. There are players, it'd be a long answer. There are new players like a company called 2Boxes who is building software to specifically solve that problem. One of the product decisions we're making today is, I'm very confident that 5 years from now, every warehouse management system, every 3PL will have to structure that data and have software solving that problem. And I think of it kind of like Netflix. I believe that when Reed Hastings started Netflix with DVDs, he knew that was a category that was going to die, and he was going to make a whole lot of investment in DVDs, and then it was going to be gone, but he needed to wait for the proliferation of high-speed internet, the customer behavior of streaming videos online, and he said, cool, I want this. The world's not there yet, so I have to do this and bridge that gap. 5 years from now, I don't want anything to do with the software in the warehouse. I want the data in our returns management software. What we're trying to figure out right now, spending time with those merchants and their operators, is can we wait, or do we actually have to go build software that will structure that data and make it far less painful in order to get what we want in our systems, or our warehouse management systems and third-party logistics providers going to have the right incentives and the right desires to build that quickly enough for us to get the data that we want. If I were betting, I think we're going to have to build software that we know will kill in 3 years.
Tell us about the sales calls you made to Shopify, how you knew they weren't just going to take your idea and take it internal.
Yeah, always some risk of that. I'd been building in the ecosystem for a long time, and I know Toby Lukey fairly well, actually. And one of the things he always said was, if most of our merchants need it most of the time, we'll do it. And I don't think it's a matter, it never has been a matter of will they do returns. It is how deep will they go into returns and when will they do it. And so we've tried to be really deeply focused on the enterprise merchants, integration heavy, workflow heavy, to where it's so in-depth that Shopify won't do it. And what we're actually doing now, Shopify owns about 5% of our company. They invested in our Series B a few years ago. We are the lead design partner, helping them build new returns APIs and exchanges APIs. And if you go back, quick aside, there was no exchanges API. So there's no such thing in Shopify today as an exchange. We are creating that concept and saying this order here is related to this order here, and it's an exchange of these products. That data doesn't exist in Shopify, and it makes our life a lot harder, but also helps us sort of have a little bit of a moat. And so we're helping them build those APIs today. And they've said, we're going to use these APIs to build a really baseline returns management product. And you're going to need to innovate to stay ahead of where we're going. And, merchants will now, the benefit is merchants will now have sort of an incumbent understanding of returns management and a really easy way to upgrade to enrich their services to ours. But they certainly are encroaching on sort of the bottom end of the market where we could win merchants, and I do think forcing us to innovate. So I don't know. I have a lot of SaaS founder friends in the Shopify space who are very annoyed at Shopify eating up their share, and I kind of look at it and say, what do you expect them to do? They've got to build a business, they've got to close product gaps. It's good for the merchant. It forces us to innovate. If building a business was easy, everyone would do it. So we have to innovate and continue to do great things, or our business is going to go away. So it's sort of a fact that I think we just have to live with.
Wow, that's a lot of questions. I don't quite understand everything, but I think I'm a bracker because whatever it's called, because I buy every size and I keep it because I fluctuate in weight and every color, so that's what I do. That's what I do.